I met the woman who carries my wife's heart on purpose. That's the part that makes this story uncomfortable. I didn't run into her by accident. I didn't stumble into her life through fate or coincidence. I looked her up. I learned her name. I memorized her face before I ever stood in the same room as her. I told myself I needed closure. The truth was darker. I wanted to see where my wife's heartbeat had gone. And if I'm being completely honest, I wanted to feel something close to anger. Anger is easier to carry than grief. Before I go further, if you're drawn to stories where love grows in the worst possible conditions, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. And tell me in the comments, would you have looked her up too, or would you have let it go? My name is Sarah Bennett. I'm 30 years old, and I design structures that are meant to last. I believe in reinforced foundations, in weight distribution, in calculating stress before it becomes collapse. I used to believe I could apply that logic to my own life. Mara and I had plans mapped out with the precision of blueprints. Travel, a bigger apartment, maybe a child someday. Stability wasn't just a preference for me. It was identity. Then a truck driver ran a red light, and the future we built disintegrated in less than 3 seconds. I remember the hospital lights more clearly than the crash report. The doctor's steady voice explaining brain death. The donation forms. Mara had been explicit about her wishes years earlier. If anything ever happened, she wanted to help someone else live. I signed the papers because loving her meant honoring that. But when they told me her heart would go to a young woman in critical condition, something inside me recoiled. I nodded. I was gracious. I was brave. But part of me wondered how I was supposed to survive, knowing that somewhere, someone else would keep living with the one thing I used to fall asleep listening to. I didn't look for the recipient at first. I told myself it was none of my business. But months passed and grief didn't soften. It changed shape. It became restless. I found myself imagining her. This stranger whose body now depended on Mara's heart. Was she careless? Was she selfish? Would she waste it? The thoughts weren't rational. They were cruel. But grief isn't rational. It's territorial. When the transplant center finally sent a follow-up email confirming the surgery had been successful, they included a name in a document I wasn't supposed to dissect. Lily Carter. I read it once. Then again. Then I did what I shouldn't have done. I searched. It didn't take long. Lily had a modest online presence. Freelance illustrator, engaged to Cassandra Vale, an executive donor at St. Vincent Medical. That name stopped me cold. Cassandra Vale wasn't just wealthy. She sat on advisory boards. She funded wings. She influenced decisions. Suddenly, the transplant felt less random and more arranged. I didn't believe in coincidence anymore. A week later, I saw an announcement for a charity gala hosted by the hospital. Cassandra would be there. So would her fiancé. The tickets were expensive, but money felt abstract compared to what I had already lost. I bought one without overthinking it. I told myself I was going for answers. I told myself I would stand across the room, look at Lily once, and finally let the resentment settle into something solid. The ballroom was all polished glass and strategic lighting. Cassandra stood near the stage, composed and immaculate, speaking to donors with controlled warmth. I recognized Lily from photographs, but in person she looked smaller. Not physically, just human. Pale under the lights. One hand resting unconsciously against her chest as she listened to someone speak, protective, unaware. Cassandra saw me before Lily did. Her eyes flicked to my name on the guest list badge, and recognition sharpened her expression for a fraction of a second before smoothing into something pleasant. She walked toward me with calculated calm. "Sarah Bennett," she said evenly. "I was wondering if you'd come." That was the moment I understood. She knew exactly who I was, and she wasn't surprised to see me. "Would you like to meet her?" Cassandra asked, as if introducing me to a colleague instead of the woman living because my wife wasn't. I should have said no. Instead, I followed her. When Lily turned toward us, her smile was hesitant but genuine. She had no idea who I was, no idea that I had memorized her face, no idea that I had rehearsed hating her. "Sarah," Cassandra said smoothly, "this is Lily." Lily held out her hand. Her skin was warm, her pulse was steady. And the anger I had carefully constructed for months didn't ignite. It flickered. Then it failed. Cassandra did not leave my side while she introduced me to Lily. That detail mattered. She stood slightly behind her fiancé, one hand resting at the small of Lily's back. Not affectionately, but strategically. A silent reminder of proximity, ownership, control. "Sarah is one of our donors," Cassandra explained smoothly. It was almost funny. I had never donated $1 to that hospital before tonight. But Lily didn't question it. She smiled at me with a softness that didn't match the room. "It's nice to meet you," she said. Her voice was lower than I expected. Warm. There was nothing arrogant about her. No trace of someone who believed she had taken something from anyone. That unsettled me more than hostility would have. "You too," I replied. I had imagined this moment dozens of times. I had imagined telling her who I was, watching her face change, letting her feel even a fraction of what I felt every morning when I woke up alone. Instead, I shook her hand and said nothing. The lie began there. Cassandra watched me carefully, not openly suspicious, just observant, measuring. When Lily excused herself to greet someone across the room, Cassandra leaned closer to me. "I appreciate discretion," she said quietly. It wasn't a threat. It was a statement. "She doesn't need unnecessary emotional stress," Cassandra continued. "Recovery requires stability." Recovery, as if Lily were still a project in progress. "As long as we understand each other," Cassandra added, her smile never faltering. I understood perfectly. She knew who I was. She had known before tonight. And she had decided that keeping Lily uninformed served her interests better. The rest of the gala blurred into polite conversations and calculated distance. Lily drifted back toward me more than once, asking small questions about my work. Architecture fascinated her in a way that felt genuine. She asked about restoration projects, about why I preferred preserving old structures instead of building new ones from scratch. "Because history matters," I said before I could filter it. She smiled at that. "I like that." Cassandra reappeared beside her almost instantly. It wasn't dramatic. She didn't interrupt. She didn't cut Lily off. She simply inserted herself into the space again, redirecting attention with subtle efficiency. I recognized the tactic. In meetings, I had used similar maneuvers to reclaim control of conversations. Seeing it deployed like this made my jaw tighten. When the event ended, I expected that to be the end of it. A single encounter. A confirmation that Lily was alive and Cassandra was formidable. But as I walked toward the parking garage, my phone vibrated. Unknown number. For a second, I hesitated. Then I answered. "Hi," Lily's voice said softly. "I hope this isn't strange. Cassandra gave me your number." "Of course she did. I just wanted to say it was nice talking to you," Lily continued. "It's rare to meet someone at those things who isn't trying to network." I leaned against my car, staring at the concrete floor. "It was nice talking to you, too." There was a pause. A small one. The kind that holds possibility. "Would you maybe want to get coffee sometime?" she asked. "Just to talk more about that restoration project you mentioned." My first instinct was refusal. This was already dangerous. But beneath the caution, something else surfaced. Curiosity. A pull I hadn't anticipated. I told myself this was research. observation, closure extended slightly. Sure, I heard myself say. After we hung up, I sat in the car longer than necessary. I should have told her. I should have said, I'm not a donor. I'm the woman whose wife's heart keeps you alive. But Cassandra's quiet warning echoed in my mind. Recovery requires stability. Stability, as if Lily's heart were fragile glass that only Cassandra knew how to hold. I didn't know what unsettled me more. That Cassandra believed that, or that part of me wanted to prove her wrong. And somewhere beneath the anger I had carried for months, something new was beginning to take shape. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But interest. And interest is far more dangerous than hate. I almost canceled the coffee. The morning of, I stood in my kitchen staring at my phone, thumb hovering over Lily's name. It would have been easy to send a polite message. Something about deadlines, about work, about needing space. That would have been the rational decision. Instead, I chose a navy blazer and told myself I was simply being courteous. Closure doesn't happen in a single conversation. That's what I told myself as I locked my apartment door. The cafe she chose sat near the waterfront, all exposed brick and filtered light. Lily was already there when I arrived, seated near the window. She looked different in daylight, softer, less staged than she had under the ballroom chandeliers. When she saw me, her smile wasn't cautious, it was immediate. That detail unsettled me more than anything else. I'm glad you came, she said. Her tone carried relief. I slid into the chair across from her and forced myself to study her neutrally. The curve of her hands around the coffee cup, the faint scar near her collarbone where the surgery must have been. I had imagined that scar before. Seeing it in person felt like stepping too close to something sacred and forbidden. You mentioned restoring older buildings, she said, leaning forward slightly. There's something romantic about that. Keeping what came before instead of erasing it. I held her gaze a fraction too long. Some structures deserve to survive, I replied. She didn't hear the weight beneath it. We talked easily, too easily. She asked thoughtful questions, not the surface-level kind people use to fill silence. She listened in a way that made me feel seen rather than assessed. It had been months since anyone looked at me without pity or forced gentleness. Lily looked at me with curiosity. Halfway through our conversation, her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her expression shifted. Not fear, not quite, but calculation. Cassandra? I asked lightly. She nodded. She just likes to know where I am. Just likes to know. The phrasing stayed with me. Lily silenced the call without answering it. That decision was small, but it wasn't insignificant. When she looked back at me, something unspoken passed between us. A quiet rebellion. I hadn't earned it. I hadn't asked for it. But it was there. Does she always check in like that? I asked carefully. Lily hesitated. She was there when I almost died. I think sometimes she still sees me as fragile. You don't seem fragile. Her lips curved faintly. That's because you're not looking at me like I might break. The honesty in her voice hit harder than I expected. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air between us felt denser, charged in a way I recognized from before, from a different life. My instinct wasn't anger anymore. It wasn't resentment. It was awareness. Awareness of the way her knee brushed mine under the small cafe table, and neither of us moved. I should have felt guilty. Instead, I felt present. When we finally stood to leave, the world outside the cafe felt brighter than it should have. We walked toward the waterfront without discussing it, as if both of us had silently agreed that the conversation wasn't finished. You know, Lily said after a few minutes, Cassandra mentioned you last night. My steps slowed. Oh? She said you were brave. The word almost made me laugh. Brave isn't the word I'd use, I replied evenly. Lily studied me then, not casually, not politely, intently. "There's something you're not telling me," she said quietly. The directness of it knocked the air from my lungs. For a second, I considered ending it right there. Telling her the truth in the middle of a public walkway, letting the impact land without preparation. But Cassandra's warning lingered in the back of my mind. Recovery requires stability, and if I told Lily now, I wouldn't be doing it for her stability. I would be doing it to relieve my own tension. So I held her gaze and said, "There are a lot of things I don't tell people right away. It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the whole truth." Lily nodded slowly, accepting that answer for now, but something in her expression shifted. Not suspicion, exactly. More like recognition, as if she understood that I carried something heavy. As we reached the edge of the pier, the wind picked up, pushing her hair across her face. Without thinking, I reached out to brush it back. My fingers paused inches from her skin. The moment stretched. Not dramatic, not explosive, just close. Close enough to feel the warmth of her breath. Close enough to realize that hate had disappeared entirely. And in its place was something far more complicated. Cassandra didn't call. She appeared. 2 days after the waterfront walk, I was leaving my office when I saw her standing near the elevator bank, composed as ever, dressed in something sharp and understated that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She didn't look irritated. She looked prepared. "Sarah," she greeted calmly. "Do you have a minute?" It wasn't a question. I considered pretending I didn't. Instead, I nodded. We stepped into a glass conference room that overlooked the city. The door closed softly behind us. Cassandra remained standing, hands loosely clasped, posture impeccable. "You're spending time with Lily," she said evenly. Not accusing, not emotional, observing. "Yes," I replied, "and you chose not to clarify who you are." There it was. No drama, just fact. "I didn't think the gala was the right setting," I said carefully. Cassandra tilted her head slightly, studying me like a variable she hadn't fully accounted for. "She's still stabilizing," Cassandra continued, "physically and emotionally. I'd prefer she not carry unnecessary psychological weight." Unnecessary. The word tightened something in my chest. "She deserves to know the truth," I said. "She deserves peace," Cassandra corrected, "and I intend to give it to her." The way she said intend made it sound like policy, not love. I held her gaze. "And what do you think I intend?" Cassandra's smile was thin, controlled. "I think you're grieving," she said. "And grief looks for meaning wherever it can find it." Her tone wasn't cruel. It was clinical. "You assume I'm unstable," I replied. "I assume you're human," she said. Silence stretched between us. The city hummed outside the glass walls. For a moment, I saw exactly how Cassandra operated, not through raised voices or jealousy, but through strategic framing. She positioned herself as protector, me as risk. "I'm not trying to hurt her," I said finally. "I don't believe you are," Cassandra replied. That surprised me. "I believe you're curious," she continued, "and curiosity can be disruptive." Her eyes sharpened slightly. "I also believe you underestimate how much Lily trusts me." There it was. Ownership, disguised as devotion. "And does she?" I asked quietly. Cassandra didn't hesitate. "Completely." Something about the certainty in her voice unsettled me more than any threat would have. "She doesn't know who I am," I said. "She doesn't need to," Cassandra replied. "Not yet. Not yet." The implication was clear. Cassandra would decide when, or if, that truth surfaced. I stepped closer to the table between us. "You don't get to control that," I said evenly. Cassandra's expression didn't change. "I get to protect the woman I love," she responded. "Love." The word sounded precise in her mouth, like it had been tested for efficiency before use. "And if protecting her means keeping her in the dark?" I asked. "It means keeping her steady," she corrected again. We held each other's gaze for several long seconds. No raised voices, no overt hostility. Just two women measuring power. Before leaving, Cassandra added one final sentence. "If you care about her at all, you'll consider the timing carefully." Then she walked out as composed as she had arrived. I remained in the glass room longer than necessary. She wasn't wrong about one thing. Timing mattered, but not for the reasons she thought. Because the more time I spent with Lily, the less this felt like grief searching for meaning, and the more it felt like something entirely new trying to take shape. Something Cassandra could not calculate. I didn't tell Lily about Cassandra coming to my office. Part of me justified the silence by calling it strategy. Another part knew it was avoidance. The more time I spent around Lily, the harder it became to separate intention from instinct. I had started this because I needed to see where Mara's heart had gone. Now I was seeing the woman it beat for, and that was no longer neutral ground. Lily invited me over the following evening. "Just dinner," she said casually. "Cassandra's at a board meeting." That detail lingered. Her apartment overlooked the water, but it felt warmer than the sterile gala had. Books stacked unevenly, sketches taped to the wall, evidence of real life. When she opened the door, she was barefoot, sleeves rolled up, hair loosely pulled back. Not curated, not staged. "You cook?" I asked, surprised. "Badly," she admitted with a soft smile. "But I try." The domestic simplicity of the moment hit harder than any dramatic revelation could have. I had imagined Lily as someone polished and distant. Instead, she handed me a glass of wine and apologized for burning the edges of the bread. We sat across from each other at her small dining table, knees almost touching. The conversation drifted easily at first. Work, ridiculous client requests, the way the ocean sounds different at night. But beneath it all, something heavier moved quietly. "You look different tonight," she said after a pause. "How?" "Less guarded." The observation caught me off balance. I didn't realize I was guarded. "You are," she said gently. But not in a cold way. More like you're carrying something fragile. Her words made my pulse spike. I could have told her then. The truth hovered just beneath the surface of every exchange. I imagined the look on her face if I said it plainly. I imagined the trust shifting, the atmosphere collapsing. Instead, I asked, "Does Cassandra think I'm fragile too?" Lily's expression tightened slightly. "She thinks everyone is fragile," she replied, "except herself." And that was the first crack, the first time she spoke about Cassandra without certainty. "Do you ever feel like she doesn't see you clearly?" I asked carefully. Lily hesitated, then nodded. "She sees the version of me she almost lost, not the one standing in front of me." Silence settled between us. Not awkward, charged. She reached for her glass at the same time I did, and our fingers brushed. This time, neither of us moved away. The contact wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a grab or a declaration. Just skin against skin. Warm, intentional. My breath shifted before I could control it. Her eyes lifted slowly to meet mine. There was no confusion in them, only awareness. "I don't feel fragile with you," she said quietly. My heart thudded hard enough to make the room feel smaller. "You shouldn't," I replied, though my voice wasn't as steady as I intended. The air changed. I could feel it, the exact moment where choice enters the room, where proximity becomes decision. She stood first, not abruptly. Just enough to close the distance. I followed without fully deciding to. We were inches apart now. Close enough that I could see the faint line of her surgical scar above the collar of her shirt. Close enough to hear the rhythm beneath it. Mara's heart. Beating. For her. For this woman standing in front of me. The gravity of that nearly pulled me back. Nearly. Lily's hand rose slowly, hesitating in the air before resting lightly against my waist. Not possessive. Testing. If I stepped away, this would end. If I leaned in, nothing would be simple again. Her breath brushed my cheek. "Sarah?" she whispered, and the way she said my name felt like a question and an invitation at the same time. For a split second, guilt surged, sharp and disorienting. I saw Mara's face in memory. I heard Cassandra's warning. Recovery requires stability. But this wasn't instability. It was clarity. I didn't kiss her. Not yet. But I didn't step away either. And in that suspended moment between restraint and surrender, I understood something with terrifying precision. I wasn't trying to hate her anymore. I was trying not to want her. And I was losing that fight.
Hi, I'm Lena. Before we go back to Sarah and Lily, let me jump in for a second. If this story has pulled you in, my Patreon has even more waiting for you, Priyav. Exclusive stories you won't find here. Longer chapters, bonus scenes, and all the little details that make these characters feel real. If that sounds like your kind of thing, the link is right below. Now, back to the story.
I don't remember deciding to close the distance. 1 second, there was space between us. Charged, fragile, reversible. The next, Lily's fingers tightened slightly at my waist, and something inside me stopped negotiating. I leaned in. The kiss wasn't urgent. It wasn't reckless. It was careful at first, almost questioning. Her lips were warm, tentative, like she was waiting for me to change my mind. For half a heartbeat, I nearly did. Then she let out a slow breath, and whatever restraint I had left dissolved. It wasn't about possession. It wasn't about grief. It wasn't about Mara. It was about the undeniable, immediate recognition that this woman standing in front of me made me feel like myself again. Awake, present, alive in a way I'd forgotten was possible. When we pulled back, neither of us stepped away. We just looked at each other. "I shouldn't have done that," she whispered. But her hand was still on me. "You didn't do it alone," I replied. That was the truth. And it felt dangerously good to say something that wasn't a lie. Her forehead hovered near mine, not touching, just close enough to blur the edges of personal space. Her breath was uneven. Mine was worse. "I don't know what this is," she admitted quietly. I did. It was complicated. It was risky. It was threaded through loss and secrecy and power dynamics neither of us had fully confronted, but it was also real. "I think," I said carefully, "it's something we should slow down." Even as I said it, I knew slowing down wasn't what either of us wanted. Lily pulled back slightly, studying me with new intensity. "You're holding something back," she said again. It wasn't accusation. It was observation. My stomach tightened. This was the moment, the cleanest possible exit. I could tell her. I could let the truth land before desire layered itself too deeply into us. Instead, I asked, "Are you happy?" The question surprised both of us. "With Cassandra?" she asked. I nodded. She didn't answer immediately. The silence was louder than anything she could have said. "I'm grateful," she replied finally. Grateful. Not in love. Not certain. Grateful. That word settled between us like an indictment. Lily stepped away then, pacing once across the small living room before turning back to me. "I almost died," she said softly. Everyone keeps reminding me of that, like it's something I should build my entire future around. Her hand moved unconsciously to her chest again. I don't want my life to be a repayment plan. The raw honesty in her voice made my pulse spike. You don't owe anyone your future, I said. Not Cassandra. Not me. Her eyes searched mine. And you? She asked quietly. What do you want from me? The question landed directly where I had been avoiding looking. I could have said closure, curiosity, understanding, but none of those would survive the heat still lingering between us. I don't know yet, I admitted. That was the most honest answer I'd given her. She stepped closer again, slower this time, deliberate. If you're unsure, she murmured, tell me to stop. I didn't. Instead, I kissed her again, softer this time, without any of the hesitation from before. My hand found hers and held on. When we finally slowed down, her forehead rested against mine, both of us quiet for a long moment. It wasn't frantic. It was intentional, which made it more dangerous. When we finally broke apart, reality rushed back in. The apartment, the city outside, Cassandra's shadow hovering at the edges of everything. We can't pretend this didn't happen, Lily said quietly. I'm not pretending, I replied. But I was still hiding, and that secret was starting to feel heavier than the grief that brought me here in the first place. As I left her apartment that night, my lips still warm, my pulse still unsteady, one thing was painfully clear. This wasn't about closure anymore. This was about choice. And I had just made one. Cassandra didn't need proof. She sensed it. 2 days after the kiss, Lily canceled dinner with me at the last minute. Her text was short, almost abrupt. Can we talk tomorrow? Something came up. Something. I didn't need clarification. The following afternoon, Lily's voice sounded different. Not distant, just restrained. She knows, Lily said quietly. My chest tightened. She saw the way I was acting, Lily continued. The way I look at my phone when you text. She asked directly. And what did you say? I asked. I said we kissed. The directness of it stunned me. You didn't deny it? No. There was a small, almost defiant strength in her voice. And what did she do? I asked carefully. Lily exhaled slowly. She didn't yell. Of course she didn't. She reminded me of everything she did while I was in surgery. Every call she made, every doctor she pushed, every decision she handled. Handled. The word felt calculated. She said I wouldn't even be here if she hadn't fought so hard, Lily added. There it was. Gratitude turned into leverage. That's not love, I said before I could stop myself. Lily was quiet. I know, she whispered. That admission felt like a crack widening. She said you're unstable, Lily continued. That you're grieving and attaching to me because I'm the closest thing left. The words hit harder than I expected. Cassandra wasn't wrong about the grief. She was wrong about the attachment. Do you believe that? I asked. No, Lily said immediately. The certainty in her voice surprised me. I feel different with you, she added. Not like I'm being managed. Not like I owe you something. I leaned back in my chair, trying to steady my breathing. You don't owe me anything, I said quietly. That was true. The guilt I carried had nothing to do with debt. It had everything to do with truth. What did she ask you to do? I asked. Lily hesitated. She asked me to stop seeing you. The words landed heavily between us. And will you? I asked. Another pause. I don't want to. That was the first time she framed it as desire instead of circumstance. Desire shifts power. She thinks you're using me, Lily said softly. That you need something from me emotionally. I closed my eyes briefly. Cassandra saw more than Lily realized. I didn't come into your life to hurt you, I said carefully. Then why did you? Lily asked. The question wasn't accusatory. It was honest. And it pressed directly against the secret I was still carrying. I opened my mouth to answer. Closure, curiosity, anger. None of those would survive scrutiny anymore. I don't fully know, I admitted. That answer wasn't enough. I could hear it in the silence that followed. Lily deserved clarity. She deserved agency. And I was still withholding the one truth that would change everything. I need to see you, she said finally. In person, not like this. When? Tonight. The urgency in her voice wasn't romantic. It was decisive. As the call ended, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the wall across from me. Cassandra had made her move. She had reframed me as risk. She had reminded Lily that survival came with loyalty attached. But what Cassandra didn't understand was this. Lily was starting to question the narrative. And when someone begins to question control, they stop being predictable. Tonight would determine more than whether we kissed again. It would determine whether I finally told her why I was there in the first place. And for the first time since this began, I wasn't afraid of losing her. I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't tell her the truth soon. I arrived at Lily's apartment, knowing there was no version of this night that left everything intact. She opened the door before I could knock twice. Her expression wasn't soft this time. It wasn't uncertain. It was resolved. Come in, she said. No hesitation. No small talk. The air inside felt heavier than before, as if the space itself understood something was about to fracture. She didn't offer wine. She didn't sit immediately. She stood near the window, arms crossed loosely. Not defensive, but braced. I need honesty, she said quietly. The simplicity of it cut deeper than any accusation. You're right, I replied. I didn't sit either. For months, I had carried the truth like a sealed envelope, telling myself I would open it at the right time. The problem with right time is that it's usually code for fear. I didn't meet you by accident, I began. Her eyes sharpened slightly. I knew your name before the gala. I knew who you were. Silence stretched. How? She asked. I swallowed. Because I'm not a donor. The words felt like stepping off a ledge. I'm Mara's wife. The room didn't explode. There was no dramatic sound, no shattered glass, just Lily's breath catching, barely, before she went still. I didn't tell you at the gala, I continued quietly. Cassandra knew who I was. She introduced us anyway. That detail landed harder than the first. She knew? Lily whispered. Yes. Her hands dropped from her arms. And you still came? She asked. I came because I needed to see you, I admitted. At first, I thought I needed to hate you. The honesty tasted raw. I thought if I saw you, if I saw where her heart was beating, maybe the anger would give me something solid to hold on to. Lily's hand moved slowly to her chest. And? She asked. I couldn't, I said simply. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the city outside. I tried, I continued. But you weren't what I imagined. You weren't careless. You weren't arrogant. You were just alive. Her eyes shimmered slightly, but she didn't cry. You let me kiss you, she said softly. It wasn't accusation. It was reckoning. Yes. And you let me feel like this without telling me. There it was. Not betrayal of identity. Betrayal of timing. I was afraid you would pull away before I understood what this was, I admitted. That wasn't your choice to make, she said, voice steady now. She was right. That realization settled heavily between us. You deserved the truth sooner, I said. And Cassandra knew the whole time? She pressed. Yes. A different kind of hurt flickered across her face at that. Not romantic pain, strategic betrayal. She said you were grieving, Lily murmured, that you were attaching to me because I was close to what you lost. I am grieving, I said quietly, but I'm not confusing you for her. I stepped closer, careful, giving her space to retreat if she wanted. You are not a replacement, I continued. You are not a symbol. You are not a vessel. You are you. The silence after that felt enormous. And if I walk away right now, she asked, I would understand. That was the hardest truth I had spoken. She studied me for several long seconds. Then she asked the question that mattered most. Do you love her? Mara. The name hovered unspoken. Yes, I answered. It was not a complicated answer. And do you want me? She asked. The vulnerability in that question nearly broke me. Yes. Also not complicated. Her breath trembled slightly. You should have trusted me with the truth, she said. I know. She moved away then, pacing once across the room, hand still resting lightly over her chest. She knew, she repeated quietly. She introduced us knowing. That realization was shifting something inside her, not toward me, away from Cassandra. She said she was protecting me, Lily murmured. Protecting you from what? I asked softly. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she turned back toward me, eyes clearer now than they had been all night. I need to talk to her, she said, not uncertain, not scared, resolved. This wasn't about us anymore. This was about control. And as I watched Lily step into her own agency for the first time since this began, I understood something with sharp clarity. Cassandra had underestimated both of us. And control, once questioned, doesn't recover easily. When the knock came, I already knew. It wasn't intuition. It was tension. The kind that lives under your skin when something irreversible is about to happen. I opened the door, and Lily stood there without a coat, hair loose around her shoulders, eyes clear in a way that made my pulse stutter. She didn't look fragile. She didn't look shaken. She looked like someone who had walked through a fire and decided not to burn. Can I come in? She asked. I stepped aside. My apartment suddenly felt too small for everything that had shifted since last night. She didn't sit. She moved toward the window, arms folded loosely, not defensive, just holding herself steady. It's over, she said. 2 words. No build-up, no hesitation. With Cassandra? I asked, even though I already knew. Yes. The air left my lungs slowly. Relief came first, sharp and selfish. Then guilt followed immediately after, like it always does when I allow myself to feel something good. What happened? I asked. She didn't deny anything, Lily said. Not about you. Not about knowing. Not about introducing us on purpose. I closed my eyes for half a second. She said she did it because she could, Lily continued. Because she believed she could manage the outcome. Manage. That word fit Cassandra perfectly. She talked about my transplant like it was a negotiation, Lily said, her hand moving to her chest, like she secured a deal. Anger moved through me, cold and precise. What did you say? I asked quietly. I said I'm not a project, she replied, and I'm not a repayment plan. The strength in her voice wasn't loud. It was controlled, decided. She reminded me of everything she did while I was in surgery, Lily added. Every call she made. every board member she pressured, every doctor she convinced. That detail made something settle heavily inside me. She influenced the list? I asked. She influenced the urgency, Lily said. Enough to make sure I was prioritized. Not illegal. Not clean either. And she thought that gave her ownership, I said. Yes. Silence stretched between us. I studied her face carefully, not looking for cracks, looking for truth. Why are you here? I asked. She met my eyes without flinching. Because I need to know something, she said, and I need you to answer without protecting me. My heartbeat slowed, strangely. Okay. Did you come into my life because I carry her heart? She asked. Or because you wanted me? There it was. No theatrics. Just the question that mattered. I didn't rush my answer. I came because you carry her heart, I said. That's the truth. Her jaw tightened slightly. But I stayed because I wanted you. Her breath shifted. I didn't expect that, I continued. I expected to feel anger, or relief, or closure. I didn't expect to feel drawn to you, and I didn't expect it to feel real. I stepped closer, slowly. You are not her, I said, and I am not trying to replace her. Mara is part of me. That doesn't disappear. But what I feel for you isn't grief looking for a substitute. She searched my face carefully. If I walk away right now, she asked, would you chase me because of her? Or because of me? The question hit deep. Because of you, I answered. No hesitation. Her shoulders loosened slightly, as if she had been holding tension in places I couldn't see. She told me you were unstable, Lily said quietly. That grief makes people latch on to proximity. I am grieving, I replied, but I'm not confused. She stepped closer then, not collapsing into me, not seeking shelter, choosing. I don't want to live like I owe someone my future, she said. And I don't want to be loved because I survived. You won't be, I said. This time, when I reached for her, it wasn't hesitant. It wasn't testing. My hand found hers and held it firmly, deliberately. No more secrets, she said. No more, I agreed. When she kissed me, it wasn't charged with rebellion. It wasn't desperate. It felt grounded, chosen. The kind of kiss that doesn't ask for rescue or redemption, just presence. And for the first time since Mara died, I didn't feel like I was standing between past and future. I felt like I was standing inside something that belonged to me again. Lily didn't move in the next morning. She didn't leave a toothbrush by my sink or fold her clothes into my drawers. We didn't rush into something that needed to prove itself by proximity. Instead, she left before sunrise with a soft kiss and a quiet, "Call me later." And I stood in my kitchen afterward feeling something unfamiliar. Not loss, not panic, not urgency. Space, real space, the kind that doesn't feel like abandonment. We started slowly. Dinner once a week turned into twice. Phone calls turned into long silences where neither of us felt the need to fill the air. There was no dramatic declaration of exclusivity. No performative shift in social media statuses. Just two women choosing each other repeatedly, in small, deliberate ways. Grief didn't disappear. That wasn't part of the deal. Some mornings I still woke up reaching instinctively toward the empty side of the bed before remembering. Some nights, when the city was too quiet, I still felt the weight of Mara's absence settle into my chest. Lily never tried to compete with that space. She didn't shrink from it either. One evening, weeks later, I asked if she wanted to come somewhere with me. She didn't ask where. That mattered. The park was nearly empty when we arrived. It was the place Mara and I used to sit on Sundays with coffee and no plans. The bench we favored was still there, paint slightly chipped along the edges. I stood beside it for a moment longer than necessary before sitting down. Lily lowered herself next to me quietly. I used to come here with her, I said. Not as confession, not as warning, just truth. Lily nodded once. She didn't look threatened. She didn't look like she was trying to measure herself against a memory. She must have loved this view, she said softly. She did. The wind moved gently through the trees. I watched Lily from the corner of my eye, the way she tilted her face toward the light, the way her hand rested casually on her thigh. There was no ghost between us, no competition. Mara lived in my memory. Lily lived beside me. Those things could exist at the same time. I don't want to erase her, Lily said after a moment, and I don't want to replace her. You're not, I replied. I know, she said. I just need you to say it. I turned fully toward her then. You are not a continuation, I said clearly. You are not a second version of something I lost. You are your own beginning. Her eyes softened, not with relief, but with understanding. That was the difference. When she reached for my hand this time, there was no tension behind it, no shadow of Cassandra, no hidden knowledge waiting to surface. Just contact, warm and steady. Later, as we walked back toward the car, she slipped her arm through mine without asking permission. It felt natural, not claimed, not borrowed. Mara's heart still beat inside her. That fact would never stop being strange, but it was no longer something that tore me open. It was simply part of the architecture of our story, a foundation built from something tragic that didn't need to dictate the design of everything that followed. That night, when Lily fell asleep beside me for the first time, I lay awake for a while listening, not to compare, not to measure, just to witness the rhythm. It wasn't the same as before. It wasn't supposed to be. And for the first time since my life split into before and after, the sound didn't feel like a reminder of what I lost. It felt like proof that love doesn't replace. It expands,